Hey there. Welcome to Watch Recap, and today, I will recap a horror, thriller movie called Orphan. Okay, so let's start. Kate and her husband John are going to hospital because she's pregnant. She is taken in while John follows after her. Suddenly, she starts bleeding and she then wakes up in the operation theater but can't find her husband with the medical staff. She feels something isn't right, and then the nurse tells her that her baby is dead. She starts to cry, but then John comes in filming as if she's going to give birth now. The nurse hands her the baby covered in blood and Kate screams. But she wakes up in her bed. She gets up to take a look at the scar on her belly, and takes a tablet. Next morning, Kate visits a psychotherapy where Dr. Browning says that nightmares are normal in case of mothers who suffer from stillborn. But Kate thinks the nightmare she saw indicates that she should adopt a kid. Then she discusses with Dr. Browning if she should do this or not. She later goes to pick up her deaf daughter Max from school. But while driving home, she gets distracted and almost hits a truck. At home, Kate plays the piano but gets irritated by some noise. She finds that Max is throwing a ball on the wall, causing the noise. She yells at her to stop, so Max apologizes. John arrives home with their son Daniel and they all play basketball. Taking another tablet before bed, Kate then shares with John about adopting a girl. They finally decides they will adopt a girl. So the couple goes to an orphanage. Welcomed by Sister Abigail, they enters the orphanage. Kate starts to look at the girls playing with each other, while John goes upstairs following a sweet singing voice and finds Esther. She tells him a story about her paintings. Kate and Abigail comes in. Esther says nobody talks to her because she's different. John and Kate decides to adopt her. Abigail tells them that Esther was originally from Russia and the family who brought her to America died in a house fire. Abigail thinks she is a nice girl and so the couple adopts her. 3 weeks later, they pick her up from the orphanage, and Kate teaches her some sign language on their way to home. Max is excited to see them and is introduced to Esther, who asks her how much she can hear. Kate tells Esther she can hear enough to read the lips, which doesn't require hearing at all. Inside, she meets Daniel and Grandma Barbara. Later, they all give her welcome gifts, except Daniel, who seems to be jealous of her when she gives John a long hug saying thank you. Daniel goes outside in his treehouse where he with his boys reads some adult magazine, while Esther and Max plays in the snow. Kate and Barbara are thinking of Esther's education while cooking. There's a storm raging outside. Kate goes to bed, and Esther goes to Max's room. Max and Esther comes in while Kate and John were kissing. They're scared of lightning and so Esther wants to sleep with Daddy. Next morning, they all are ready to leave for school, but Esther comes down in a fancy dress making Daniel and Max giggle. Kate asks if she really wants to wear this to school, and Esther says there is nothing wrong in being different. Later, Esther is welcomed to the class by the teacher and also made fun of by some kids. Later, Max and Esther plays on the frozen lake, so Kate yells at them saying that's not safe. Meanwhile, playing with paintball gun, Daniel accidentally shoots a pigeon and it falls on the ice, suffering from pain. Daniel feels bad for it, but Esther tells him to finish it with the rock or it will die slowly and painfully. Daniel refuses, so Esther kills the pigeon. Later, while Esther takes a bath, Kate comes in to pick clothes for laundry but finds a Bible and also a photo of a man inside of it. At school, Daniel's friends are making fun of him because of Esther, so he pushes her and she falls. Esther's classmate picks up her Bible and throws it on the ground. The girl calls Esther a dog because of her choker, but Esther screams and scares the girl. While teaching her piano, Kate asks her about the incident at school, but Esther doesn't want to talk about it. Kate shows her the family scrapbook in which she also added her photo. But Esther asks, "Who's Jessica?" Max told her about her. Kate tells her that Jessica died while she was still in her belly. At night, John thinks the kids are sleeping and so starts to play with her wife in the kitchen. But gets shocked when he sees Esther. Later, Kate tries to explain Esther what she was doing with Dad in the kitchen, but is shocked when Esther says, "I know you were f***ing." She asks John to take Esther to Dr. Browning, but John thinks it's just a word. Later, John takes the girls to the park, where a neighbor comes and starts to flirt with him. Esther doesn't like this. Esther's bully also comes inside the park but looks scared of Esther, and when the girl was going to slide, Esther comes from behind and pushes her and breaks her leg. Max saw her doing this. When John confronts Esther about this, she lies, and Max also lies to save her sister. Esther prays before eating, and so Max also did the same. Daniel finds Esther's behavior weird and insults her. John asks him to apologize to her, but he leaves, so John locks his treehouse as a punishment. While Kate was in the store with Esther and Max, she receives a call from Abigail, who wants to talk with Esther, but Esther refuses. Kate steps away and tells Abigail about what lately happened. Max reads her lips and tells Esther what she's saying. That night, Kate sees Esther playing the piano beautifully and is surprised. She asks why Esther lied, not knowing how to play. Esther says she lied for her benefit. Kate discusses about this with John, but the conversation slowly turns into an argument. Next day, Abigail comes to see Esther. Abigail then reveals how Esther had hurted many kids in the past and usually had a strange behavior with her. Esther overhears everything, so she quickly goes to Max and convinces her to help her so Abigail doesn't take her away. Listening to Abigail, Kate suggests to take Esther to Dr. Browning, and John also agrees. Max helps Esther to find the treehouse keys and to open John's locker, so Esther can take the revolver. Abigail leaves, but Esther follows her with Max. She waits for Abigail's car to arrive, and then she pushes Max on the road, causing Abigail to crash her car. When Abigail comes to check if Max is okay, Esther comes from behind and hits her with the hammer. Esther asks Max to help her in pulling Abigail off the road. They throw her down the slope, but Abigail is still alive, so Esther attacks her again and kills her. Then they go into the treehouse, where Esther hides her clothes covered in blood and the hammer. She tells Max that they will arrest her if she tells anyone about this, and tells her she loves her. Daniel sees them getting out of the treehouse, but Esther also sees him, and so at night she threatens him to never tell anyone about her or she will cut his pee-pee off. The boy is scared and pees himself. Kate and John takes her to Dr. Browning, where Dr. Browning tells them there is nothing wrong with Esther, but blames Kate as a mother taking out her stress on Esther. She explains how Esther is a nice, shy, and kind-hearted girl, while at this moment Esther is literally trying to break her office toilet out of frustration. John agrees with Dr. Browning. Coming home, Kate receives a call from the orphanage asking about Abigail, and so Kate calls the police, and then police finds Abigail's body where Esther left it. Police asks John and Kate, but they know nothing about this. We then see Esther switching on and off the light of the aquarium as she stares at the scary painting she draw of the house in this family. Kate searches online about disturbed kids and shares about this with John, who doesn't understand what a worried Kate is trying to explain. But they decide they will find more about Esther's past life, and so Kate calls the orphanage in Russia where Esther came from, but they have no records about Esther's past life. Next morning, John wakes up Esther to take her to the dentist, but she doesn't want to go, so he says he will reschedule the appointment. They spend time together, and Esther says she thinks Kate doesn't like her. While dropping Max and Daniel to school, Kate asks how they feel with Esther, but they lie, saying she is sweet and normal. That night, Esther comes in the kitchen saying she has a present for Kate. She brings her flowers she picked from where Kate buried her daughter Jessica. Kate gets mad and pushes her away while crying for the flowers. John comes and tries to calm Kate. Later, Esther goes in the garage and breaks her hand purposefully. She then lays in bed and calls John, saying her arm is hurting. John finds that her arm is broken, so he takes her to hospital. Returning home, he confronts Kate why she grabbed her hand that tight, but Kate says that's impossible because she just pushed her lightly. John says Esther wants to sleep with him, and so Kate goes downstairs to sleep. Kate buys 2 bottles of wine. She is upset and drinks a glass of wine, but throws the rest of the wine down the sink. Next day, as Kate drops Daniel at the school, his books falls down as Esther teared his bag. Kate gets out to help him, but Esther puts the car from park to neutral while Max is still inside. The car moves down the slope with speed, but luckily gets stuck in the snow and Max is safe. That night, Kate says she is sure she parked the car before getting out, and also that Max is lying for Esther. John shows her the second bottle of wine Esther found. She tries to convince them, but they are not believing her at all. Dr. Browning even suggests her to go to rehab for a few days, and John also asks her to go to rehab or he will leave, taking the kids with him. At this point, Esther is threatening Max that if she tells anyone about her she will kill her mom like she killed Abigail. Later, Daniel goes to Max's room and she tells his brother about the stuff Esther hid in his treehouse. Daniel says he will go and take the stuff out, but Esther overhears this. During midnight, Kate goes to check Max, but Esther is there, sitting on a chair with Kate's diary. She starts to read about Kate's traumatic past from the diary. She says Kate failed to be a good mother and wife, then leaves. Kate still tries to know about Esther's past but fails, so she goes into Esther's room to find her Bible. Inside the Bible she finds photos of some men, and the name Sarney Institute. She searches the name online and finds this as a name of a mental asylum, not an orphanage. She calls to know more but they don't speak English. Meanwhile, Daniel sneaks out of the house to get the stuff Esther hid in the treehouse. But Esther comes, she pours gasoline on the clothes in the treehouse and then flames it. She locks Daniel inside and leaves. Daniel cries for help but Kate is busy searching about Esther. He manages to get on the roof and calls for his mother. He loses his balance and falls on the ground. Esther is watching this and smiling. Kate finally sees the fire and rushes out. While Esther was trying to finish Daniel, Max pushes her and saves Daniel. Kate comes and finds Daniel unconscious. He is taken to hospital where doctor tells them he has serious injury on his neck and might forget whatever happened. Kate tries to convince John that Esther is trying to kill Daniel but he still thinks Esther is innocent. Esther somehow makes her way to Daniel's room and tries to kill him. Max, trying to save her brother, alerts Kate and the doctors. The doctors manages to save Daniel. Kate is filled with rage, so she slaps Esther, crying and screaming she is trying to kill her son. But she is injected with a sedative. When she wakes up she requests John to not let Max stay alone while Kate is made to stay in the hospital. At night, Max takes out her hearing aid as she is going to sleep. But Esther picks up the hearing aid as she hugs Max. John goes down and drinks as he is so stressed. But Esther comes down dressed like an adult lady. She kisses John and tries to seduce him. John hesitates and says it's not that type of love between him and Esther. She tries again but this time John gets mad at her. He asks her to go to her room. Esther goes to her room and cries. Meanwhile, Kate receives a call from Dr. Varava from Sarney Institute, who tells him that the girl Kate thinks is a 9-year-old kid is actually a 33-year-old woman. She has a rare disease called hypopituitarism which makes her look like a child. She killed the family in America and burnt their house when she couldn't seduce the father. She was the most violent patient of the asylum and her real name is Lena. She have scars all over her body and have killed at least 7 people till now. The doctor also says that Kate doesn't have much time and must do something fast. On her way to home she calls John, but before he could pick the call the light goes off. He looks around for a strange sound, but then, he is stabbed by Esther from behind. He is still alive so Esther stabs him until he's dead. Max sees her doing this and so Esther now goes after her. Kate drives so fast that she crashes inside the house. Hearing the noise, Esther takes out the revolver. Kate sees John and then rushes to save Max. She can't find Max as she's hiding somewhere else. But then, Esther shoots Kate in the arm. She comes up to check her but Kate hides outside the window. Max goes inside the garden and hides. Kate can see Max from above and asks her to hide. Esther comes and sees Kate above and shoots again. Esther then spots Max and shoots after her. Kate breaks the mirror and jumps on Esther to stop her from killing Max. Slowly Kate wakes up, and taking the gun she goes outside the house leaving Esther behind. But when the cops arrive they only find John, and Esther is missing. As Kate puts Max down, Esther attacks her from behind and they both rolls down the slope towards the frozen river. Esther tries to kill Kate with a knife but Max picks up the gun. Max accidentally shoots at the ice. The ice breaks and they both falls inside. They struggle in the water until Kate punches Esther in the face. Kate comes out the water but Esther grabs her legs saying, "Mommy, don't let me die, please save me." But Kate shouts, "I'm not your mommy," and kicks Esther in the face. Esther goes down in the water while Kate holds on to a terrified Max. This is where the movie ends. Subscribe to the channel if you love movies, like and share the video, we appreciate it. See you again.